Morning, it's Martin from Martin's Engine Services. Well, we're back to sticking engines together today. No, it's probably not the most exciting thing. I think you've seen me assemble quite a few of these now, so it won't be a hugely long video. I just thought I'd show you a few bits and pieces from it. And I suppose it also gives me a good opportunity to stand in the workshop and talk to myself. I suppose any of you who've been involved in the motor trade for long enough probably aware that this is not an uncommon thing to end up talking to yourself, and eventually it's the only way you'll get a sensible answer. It has that effect on you. The heady days of mad enthusiasm and getting on with it all and the land under cars and all that slowly ebbs away until you think, what am I doing? It does have the effect on everybody, and sometimes you have to sit back and just laugh at it. Where I get my car's MOT, they've got a young lad just started there now, and he's full of enthusiasm. He's out there and he's covered head to foot in dirt, and he's so happy and whatnot. He's been out there a few months now, and I thought, you wait till the winter comes and the car's all cold and wet, and you're struggling, and your fingers are freezing. I thought, you'll soon find out the reality of it all. I suppose there's are some people who still love it, but I started back in the day when things were much simpler, and the most complicated thing you ever had to deal with was a set of points on the Mark IV Cortina. And then that newfangled electronic ignition came along on a Sierra or a Mark III Escort, and wow, that was technical. And then that newfangled fuel injection came along on Cavaliers and stuff, and wow, that was a whole world of adventure. Still, heady days, mustn't ramble on, so I'll just do the usual. Put the long round sort of twisty roundy thingy in the hole there, and jam a few bits and pieces in roughly the right order and glue all the other bits in, and she'll be fine. No, as I said, this is quite a clean block actually. It's honed out well, very little marking on the bores. I've picked the best of the two crankshafts available. They've both got a few marks in them which some have polished out. I've measured them up. They're sort of about mid tolerance, so that'll be okay. I've got a variety of bearings over here that I've had laying around from stock and bits and pieces, so I've had a good sort through, and we actually only really need to get a head gasket and bolts and an oil pump gasket. Otherwise, I've got all the other parts to do this. So pretty good news. So as usual, I'll start off by laying the main bearings in, and then I'll lay the crank in, and then I'll bring you back and we go from there. Right, we've dropped the crank in, that's sitting in there nicely. It goes round, so time to stick some bearing caps on. Done my usual procedure, set the bearings in, put them on there, little tap just to square them up. In no particular order, we've got, number one. Looks like I almost planned that. As always, the two tags go together. Tags together. And the numbers should all read the same way, theoretically. No, they do. You'll know if you got one wrong, because the minute you start to tighten it up, it will go absolutely tight, and that's it. These bearing caps do actually locate on this side here. There's a slight lead, then there's a machine face, and that sits against the machine face in the block. So if you start to put it down wrong, it will immediately lock. It says having that one round the wrong way. There we go. So pretty usual procedure, bit of oil, stick them all in the hole. Remember, as long as you've got rid of all the bits, you're winning. When you filled up all the various holes, your various bolts, you can't go too far wrong. Those are pretty straightforward engine really, there's no real horrors about it. Nothing particularly complicated. Just remember, when you've got lots and lots of different engines apart, or the same version as this, but lots of parts, I like to clean up one set of parts, put them all to one side so I know where they are. So everything I've got is one working set. So all the bolts out, everything out, all the fixtures, odds and ends, brackets, etc. So I've got one set aside that I'm going to work from, and don't start introducing other parts. It's very easy to get very confused. And of course, finish assembly, turn round and notice that sitting on the bench is a rather interesting and very important looking bolt. And you start asking yourself the question of, did I leave that out? Sometimes you make a mistake like that. I do recall a long time ago, it was a long time ago, a good friend of mine was helping a good friend of mine reassemble a 2.8 V6 Granada engine. And we'd finished the assembly and he put the crank in and put the pistons and bits and pieces in, and we were tidying up the bench, sump was on, and I scrunched up the box, the main bearings came in, and the packet, and found the main bearing in the box. And I said to him, "You got one left over?" So it was a case of off come the sump, and of course it was the very last one we took off, and of course it had to be the one that was sitting in the block. So we had to lift the crank up and change it. So it was quite amusing. Scrunching up the box and thought, this is not good. On the later V6s, they actually had two types of main bearing fitted on the thrust. There was one with the integral thrust washers like these have, and the Ford Zetec, and there was one without. And they actually put an extra bearing in the kit. First time I came across this, I opened up a set of these, and I thought, well, why have we got an extra bearing? And I got a bit of head scratching, and it occurred to me what the difference was. You think to yourself, hello, what's going on? There we go, look at that. I know I haven't got the rear one on yet, but that's enough just to snug it down and make sure. It will go better once it's torqued and everything aligns, but just want to make sure. So the next stage is the old fiddle around with the rear bearing cap, which I shall stop things for a minute and get that ready, and then I'll torque it all down. So back in a mo. Right, well that's them all in and torqued and angled. Now comes the messy job of shoving the gasket sealer down the rear oil seal face. So I've injected these as full as I could before I started, so it's now just a case of push it in till it comes out the bottom. They've used this idea for many years, and I think wow, when you first come across this on Vauxhall GM, the old rear wheel drive Cavalier cam in the head engine, CIH engine, 1600 or 1600, 1900 I think in the Opals, and 2 litres, and then of course the 6-cylinder versions. That was a funny old engine. Cam in the middle of the head, rockers on the top. And on the 2 litres you had to do the valve clearances of the engine running. You preloaded the lifters and then you turned them around a bit by bit until the engine started to misfire, and then you backed them off a little bit. Very intriguing. And you had to have some sort of a guard over the timing chain because of course it launched hot oil at you at all times. So it was quite an entertaining one to do. A very heavy, robust old cast iron lump of an engine they were. Another good party trick on those was people who put the wrong spark plugs in them. Because the spark plugs actually went in the side of the cylinder head, absolutely 90 degrees to the piston, and they were very short reach spark plugs, almost like lawnmower ones. And people would put ordinary length plugs in, and the engine would make this like tapping noise for a while, and that was the end of the spark plug being beaten by the piston. But if you left it too long, you couldn't get them out, of course, it pinned all the thread over. So that was one particular foible of that engine. go, that's all coming out of that one. A lovely horrible job. I imagine at the factory they must have had some sort of device that went down here like a rubber gasket around here that just pressurised it in, because obviously you couldn't expect a team of guys or ladies to stand here and do this all day. It's slightly drive you mad after about the first or second one, I should think. I was thinking everything had this, the old 13Ss, the 16SHs, the NVs, 18Es, everything, practically everything in the, everything really, all the front wheel drive, rear wheel drives. Yeah, I think this is a pretty standard way of doing it. And of course, then it was just ordinary silicone. Well, GM had their own gasket sealer you had to use to buy, if I'm rightly, which was extortionately expensive. And I think it was just very posh silicone in a very posh tube. It's come in a box and little tube, cardboard tube, and I think it was just very, very expensive posh silicone, really. I always like to use this Durco, whatever it's called, L-Ring 1, or the other version I've got over there. But I mean, basically, this is their equivalent of the good American Permatex, which is without doubt the best. You just don't seem to have any problem when you use this stuff. Apart from someone's just put their thumb through the tube and made a really good mess. Now look at that. Well done, Martin. Nearly there. Might as well use that. Yuck. And don't pick up the piece of rag that you've been doing this with, because you will end up with it absolutely everywhere. Mind you, I have to admit, I did that yesterday. I was changing the oil on a Nissan Note, which is diesel, which is the Renault engine. And the oil filter is up the wrong way, up the front of the engine block, which is very hard to get to. And when you undo it, of course, the oil goes all over the front of the engine. And they hold quite a lot of oil, those, nearly 5 litres. And of course, it was quite warm when I undid it. The sump plug, I took the sump plug out, oil hit the drain pan and decided to shoot over the side. So you move the drain pan position and it shoots over the other side. And by the time you've finished and it's calmed down, you've got more on the floor than more on you than is in the pan. So that was quite a spectacular mess. So I had to clean that one up. Cleaned it up a bit, dragged the drain pan out from underneath the vehicle, and then constantly slopped it all over the place again. So now I've got another mess all over the floor. So you get those times when you just keep on making a mess and you think, really? The ones that in the end you think, okay, we'll have 1 grand clear up when this carnage is over. Anyhow, I'll pause proceedings there. I'll clear up the last of this mess and then we'll resume in a moment. Right, so I've got 2 pistons and rods in. You've all seen me banging pistons into holes before. Usual procedure. Find the bearing caps. Seat the bearing in the cap. Stick it on. Takes together. Notch to the back. if all goes to plan, you shouldn't have any parts left over-ish. I don't know if any of you ever remember seeing that great film with Michael J. Fox called Doc Hollywood, when he was the high-flying young doctor trying to get to Hollywood, and he crashed his, I think it was a Carman Gear VW in this little local town, and they conspired to keep him there, and the guy in the local garage was repairing the engine for him, and near the end of the movie, he did stay in the end, but near the end of the movie, when he got the car back, the guy gave him the car and presented him this lovely little box, and he said, "What's that for?" He said, "That's all the parts that are left over." He said, "Whenever I do a job, I always get a few parts left over, and I like to give them to the customer to keep, sort of thing." And I always think of that as being just quite an amusing one. The way he presented it to him as, "I always get a few parts left over." I don't know whether you could try doing that to now with people and you say, "Oh, sorry, I got a few bits left over. Can't be important, car still works." I think somebody else once said, some of those sort of, one of them sort of films like that, similar scenario, that you can always tell the quality of a vehicle by how well it still works with half the parts missing. Right, that's the basics. I'll come and do them all properly in a moment. Side plate. Always worth having a look down the cylinder and making sure that the connecting rod is dead central into the piston. This will give you a clue as if you've got any sort of slight bow in the corner or bend in the rod, because obviously it should sit dead central. There shouldn't be any variation. I mean, the connecting rod is a highly accurately machined component which is dead parallel, and everything should be in line. So if you've got one that's fractionally offset, just settle it, turn it a little bit to make sure it's found its natural position. But if it's kicked over one way, you have a problem. Definitely Houston, we have a problem. Right, position that at bottom dead centre, and I shall stick the other two in. Right, well, it's all them in, so it's just good. So again, torque them all up, and we're good to go. First stage is 18. No, that's So I always like to assemble an engine in a certain order. I mean, everybody's got their own way of doing it. I mean, some engines obviously are different. You have to assemble them different ways. I mean, I've never done one by like the Subaru Flat 4 where you got to slide the cases on, and VWs and stuff, the old flat engines. But I tend to, wherever possible, do the same assembly procedure. Bottom in like this, rotating assembly, cranking rods, all that done, oil pump, and build up from there. It's just the way I've always done it, and I think that way you kind of, it's just a familiar pattern. Oh, slight adjustment there, folks. I went a little bit. Hang on. Got to get this better. That's it. springs are biting nicely. Right, go around again. Check the side plate, that's nice. Looks like my engine stand needs a little adjustment. And again, check the con rods are straight down the bores, that all looks fine. Yeah, nice. See, the bump on the con rod is all facing backwards. So as long as someone put all the pistons on right at the factory, we're good to go. It's all gone in there very nice as always. Feels good. Yeah, that's nice. I like that. Sneaky chocolate biscuit time. Well, next stage in operations is the oil pump. I've just got to change the oil seal in that, just to be on the safe side, so I'll just do that and then we'll get it in place. Right, let's clean the mating face properly, get all the oil and paint off. This gasket has to be put on dry and make sure it's very, very clean. You can see that the main bearings are sitting nicely when you check that, all looking good. So, right, one oil pump gasket. Lost the oil pump, stand by. Right. This is actually the oil pump from the engine had the piston failure, or head gasket failure rather. It's burnt the piston. There was no metal in the oil, there was no damage to anything else. I've had the pump apart and inspected it and it's absolutely fine. It's well within wear limits. I think it's poor old pump, seen some action over the years. But it's a good unit, oil pressure's good, so why change it? And now for the bit where everybody goes, oh no. I hope you got one that doesn't want to work today. Really? You'll get one. But make sure it's on the hexagon of the oil pump drive first. Okay. Well, looks like Martin's master plan has failed this time. Okay, bring you back in a moment. I'll go to fight with that. I win. Typical, you try for 5 minutes, you stand back and watch it and it falls on its own. Welcome to Engines and Cars, people. If you spend an hour trying to line up a gearbox spigot or maybe a tool converter spigot, You give up, you walk away, you stand there and you hear clunk because it all lines up on its own. Why, oh why? Now that's where the timing sensor bolts on the alley bracket and sits in. In fact, that's got a little bit knocked off there over the combat years, but doesn't matter, it's only an alignment peg. But I've just got to find an extra bolt for that now, because obviously it has a longer bolt when that bracket's on there. So I put a normal length bolt in for now, and just to make sure it's all tight. This is where stripping down an old engine's handy, because you end up with this. All the handy fixtures and fittings that you might need. Because there's always a few things, get a few damaged threads along the way, and you know, the odd head gets a bit rounded off. Especially them Torx ones. I mean, these things are coming apart and going together so many times. You see this poor oil pump, she's had some action, but she's still a good one. It's not scored inside. Tolerances are very good, lovely finish. The cover plate's good, so I've got no reason to want to change it. Having seen the quality of an aftermarket one that was on one of the last engines I did, I must say it looked fairly horrid. So it seemed to work all right, but it lacked that nice sort of finish that the factory one has. Right. Martin, they're 8. That's right. Not 7. That's better. Malfunction in the reading department. Even with new reading glasses, still struggling. Poor old sod. Right, that's him on. So I've had these out, cleaned them up, they're all right. So she's good to go. So next thing I do is roll it over, all pick-up pipe and the sump. There we go, all pick-up pipes on. Sorry about the rattle in the background, the compressor decided to come on. That seems quite normal. I watched quite a lot of videos from various people. There's South Main Auto with Eric, and every time he makes a video, the compressor comes on. Musty one, he's a good one to watch. He also tends to find the compressor comes on. They just know. Make sure the oil pickup pipe's nice and clean. Blown out the debris, you know, get rid of anything in there, bits of old bearings, old piston rings, bits of shale, dead flies, and anything else that might be lurking in there. No, seriously, it's all clean. It's been flushed out properly. There's no, say, although the engine has suffered with the head gasket and the piston problem, there was no contamination at all. Spotlessly clean inside. I cut the oil filter open out of curiosity, but I mean, none of the bearings that came out had any marks on them at all. In fact, they were so good you could have reused them, so not a problem. Right, now I'll just get ready and it's time to stick the sump on. As usual, one more cursory look. Yes, I have checked the arrows on the pistons. They are all pointing roughly in the right direction-ish. Well, I guess as long as you got a few of them right, it'll be fine. And the famous words was it, what could possibly go wrong? In reality of the motor trade, anything and everything. Right, let's get that cleaned up, thoroughly wiped around there and get the sump on. Right, one sump pan ready to go. This is sort of an earlier type, or one of the many types they had, which incorporates the rubber gasket. It sits proud, just sits proud of the lip about that far. And that's all you do. You do not need to put any sealer on this at all, although I have still put a little bit here and here just for good measure. Hopefully no one will spot that and report me to General Motors, but hey ho. So these gaskets can be good fun when they've been scrunched up in the packet. There's a location tag here and they're all scrunched up. I left this one flattened out on the bench overnight and it's staying in, so just watch it, don't want to fall out. Drop it on carefully. You obviously got to do the alignment at the back procedure. Excuse me. Right, stick all the bolts in. Torque her up, or line it up, torque it up, and then that's that on. And then it's just a water pump and a few bits and pieces. I will actually put the plastic cover on the front, the inner timing belt cover and stuff. I don't normally do that till I put the head on, but I think I'll just get rid of all the bits and pieces. Now one of these bolts is bigger at the front because it's actually got a strip thread in the oil pump. It's that one. Later. Oh, you can't quite see it in camera shot, but don't be alarmed by the fact that there's the internal parts of an oil pump sitting on the bench. I'm actually servicing another good original oil pump for use. So that's why there's a few important looking parts over there. This one, that say, came off the engine we took apart, and I looked at it, it was all nice and original GM, it was all fine inside, so I thought, well, I'll give it a clean up, put new seal in it, and we've got a good old up, ready to go pump in stock, so that's what I'm going to do. Anyhow, we're up to over half an hour already, so I think we call that it. You've seen me bolt sumps on, in fact, you've seen me assemble these many times, but so it gave me a chance to stand in the workshop and talk to an engine for half an hour, which keeps me off the streets and keeps me sane-ish, or very-ish. So I get this done this morning. This afternoon I've got a MOT job on a Nissan Note I serviced yesterday. And then I think tomorrow, or later on today, we may go back to Project Peugeot. So I'll give you an update on everything when I do the usual what's happening in the workshop on Wednesday. So thanks very much indeed for watching yet another video of me assembling an engine. Please like and subscribe, it's very much appreciated, and we're over the magic 100 now, we're sitting at 101, so fantastic. Thanks for anybody who's subscribed and anybody who's watched or given me a like, it is truly appreciated. Bye for now.